I would like to welcome up to the stage next, if Nik, you can come down and join us. I can't actually see anything because of these lights, but there you go. And Nik is Head of Marketing and Engagement at the Tank Museum, and he's going to be talking today about museum and the creator economy. So take it away, Nik.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Nik, Head of Marketing at the Tank Museum. Quick show of hands from what I can see. Has anyone actually visited the Tank Museum before? I think there's literally one person in the room. I've got my work cut out, apparently. So don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about tanks. I'm actually going to be talking about a strategy that demonstrates it's possible to use social media to build financial resilience, as well as reach new audiences and build communities. So the Tank Museum houses the world's very finest collection of tanks. We're a registered charity and a regimental museum, and we attract around 225,000 visitors per year. But our rural location is a barrier to significant growth. Here we are in Dorset, literally in the middle of nowhere. It's a rural county. Getting here is increasingly difficult, increasingly expensive, increasingly time-consuming, and it's not going to get any easier. So to challenge this, we create quality content for social media platforms to make our collections and stories accessible to a global audience. And what makes us different is that we're using these platforms to generate revenue, all in support of our mission, which is to tell the story of the tank and the people that served in them. On YouTube, we have over 1 million subscribers and over 300 million channel views. In the last month alone, we've had 90 million views, which is quite a lot. And last year, we used this reach to generate almost 30% of our total turnover online from non-visitors. And that's not by charging for access to this content. So this framework describes how we do it, and I'll go through each of these in turn. So first of all, attention is generated by the content we create, so it needs to be good. But when we say good content, what we really mean is good for our specific target audience. And if you recognize any of the guys on screen at the moment, you'll get an idea of how our target audiences are likely to be very different indeed. Now, whatever the topic, I have another framework that defines the essential elements of successful branded content. First of all, it should be consistent. We all know posting consistently is important, but we also need to be equally consistent with our topic and how we meet our audience's expectations. So we only talk about the things that we know our audiences actually care about, and not the things that certain stakeholders think they ought to be interested in. Next, it must be original. YouTube is, of course, incredibly competitive. So within our niche, we need to ask what it is that we can offer the audience that others can't. And for this, we rely on our collections and our expertise in the subject. Next, it has to be niched. Now, our niche is specifically defined by our mission, so our audience is composed exclusively of those who are specifically interested in the history of armoured warfare. And as you can imagine, this is a very narrow niche. The show of hands sort of shows it all. But the internet is a big ocean, so there are always plenty of fish. So here, we're not creating for everyone. And actually, nobody who is successful on YouTube is trying to. Because to do this would be to swim against the tide, because social media is all about individual preference. The algorithms that have developed have done so to satisfy audiences by recommending more of the content they already like, and consumption is driven far more by recommendation than search. Next, of course, it should be generous, and that means it must be loaded with value for the audience. We're competing with all kinds of content creators for the attention of people who are scrolling on their phones for a brief hit of entertainment. So we have to earn that attention by being interesting, authoritative, and useful enough to fulfill the needs of the target audience. Next, it must be accessible, and that means it's got to be presented in line with the conventions that suit the platform and suit the audience, making it enjoyable to consume. This is a highly creative exercise when you're making educational content. And finally, perhaps most importantly, it must be authentic. Authenticity is what allows meaningful long-term relationships to develop with the creator, and these are based on trust and credibility. And as museums, of course, we have a head start in this because we're authoritative and therefore people do trust us. Authenticity is increasingly a valuable differentiator online in a world where people are increasingly suspicious of clickbait, manipulation, and misinformation. So next, when you have your audience, you can get to know them and they can get to know you. We gained the trust of our audience and made them feel connected by responding to their comments and seeking their feedback. This made our content better, made us appear more human, and it also allowed us to learn more about them. Now, our audience is composed of many constituent parts. All are technically tank enthusiasts, but each would share one or more corresponding interests with other members of that audience. And understanding this has allowed us to make the content relevant to all of these entry points, and that's what's kept the audience growing. So by understanding our audience, their needs, and how we can meet them, we've grown an online audience that values our output. Now, what's really striking is just how different our YouTube audience is from our standard museum visitor profile. It's far more male, it's 94% male rather than 55% of our visitor base. It's younger than the average museum visitor, and it's far more international. Interestingly, the vast majority of our online audience are actually based in North America. Now, these are the real subject enthusiasts, whereas our visitors tend to have more of a passing curiosity in the subject. So by positioning ourselves as the charity that communicates, preserves, and conserves this history for future generations, we've developed an audience that has an almost emotional attachment with us because they believe in our mission and they appreciate what we do. And as we've earned trust from this audience, it's begun to evolve into a community. A community is loyal, and that means it can be very supportive when appropriately motivated. So the creator economy allows, The creator economy allows independent content creators to make a living from the audiences they have built. And all I did was take this model and apply it to the not-for-profit sector to raise funds. And this is how we're doing it. On YouTube, the more viewers you have, the more you earn from the ads that YouTube places on these videos. Pretty straightforward. Memberships. Patreon.com is a platform that allows us to run an online membership scheme which is directly related to our content creation. It's our most successful regular giving scheme ever, and looking at the locations of our Patreon supporters, you can see how important this overseas audience is to us, and these, of course, were previously unreachable. Now, anyone who watches YouTube will have seen creators endorsing products with corporate sponsors. And this is an area, of course, we have to tread carefully because there are many well-publicized risks for a museum in this. However, we have a very successful partnership with the producers of this particular video game. World of Tanks is played by literally millions of people worldwide. And you can even play as vehicles from the museum's collection. This one is Tiger 131, and it's probably our most famous exhibit. World of Tanks is brand safe. It's helped us reach an even bigger audience ourselves. So the value of this partnership is actually very difficult to put a figure on. And finally, e-commerce. Even small YouTubers will have a basic online store selling print-on-demand merch, and our online store specifically targets our tank enthusiast YouTube audience with books, models, and self-developed products, like our famous tank slippers, are among our biggest sellers. If you're interested, come and see me in the car park later. I can sort you out. The majority of our traffic is referred organically to our online store with relevant products signposted on our content using the YouTube merch shelf, which you can see on the screen at the bottom there, where we've got some merchandise which is directly related to the video that we've published above. Now, what's really interesting is our e-commerce has grown from 120K turnover in 2019 to 1.7 million gross last year, and it's still growing, and it now completely dwarfs our on-site retail operation, which I know for a museum is highly unusual. So what can we learn from all of this? So first, I think the existence of the creator economy proves that content consumers are prepared to financially support creators who offer value and purpose in their output, even though they can get it all for free. And there is an opportunity here for everybody. For us, it's created a completely new revenue stream that's made us more financially sustainable and more financially resilient, which, given the experience that we all went through a few years ago, is pretty important. Second, by this method, a user doesn't have to be able to visit the museum to be enriched by it, because we can take the museum to the user. And as such, it is possible to use content marketing to achieve charitable objectives at scale and generate revenue from previously unreachable audiences. Social media companies should literally be falling over themselves to encourage organizations like ours to do this. But sadly, from what I've seen, they don't particularly care, particularly Meta. Third, museums no longer have to be confined to their buildings. The power of our stories and relative ease of creation means our message can circle the globe in hours. The majority of our online audience has never visited us, and most probably never will. To them, the Tank Museum is first and foremost a YouTube channel offering free educational videos. And if you stop and think about that for a moment, you get an idea of what the museum of the future could be. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.